Welcome to the Sonic Collective, a music podcast that explores a different album or musical concept each month, diving deep into its history, context, and impact on the music industry. Join our hosts, Alan, Scott, and Darren Scott, that's way too many Scotts, as they share their thoughts, insights, and personal connections to the music, inviting you, the listener, to discover new perspectives and appreciation for some of the greatest albums and music of all time.
Hi, everyone out there in Sonic Collective land. This is Scott G, joined by Scott C, Alan, and Darren, and we're here to review my pick for April 2023, When Fallen Angels Fly by country artist Patty Loveless. Thinking back to a review of Dwight Yoakam, I really wanted to take another stab at a country artist and one that was apparently putting a contemporary twist on the traditional styles. When Fallen Angels Fly won the Country Music Awards Album of the Year. At this time, she was only the third ever female artist to accomplish that feat, so I had some high expectations coming in. But before we get to the rest of my thoughts, as is custom here at the Sonic Collective, we're very quickly going to hear what my colleagues have to think of it too. So let's kick over to Scott C to start us off.
Yeah, thanks very much, Scott. Interesting comments. You know, I'm not a country and Western kind of person, and I knew the name Patty Loveless, but to my knowledge, can't really ever remember listening to her. So started listening to the album, Handful of Dust, nice opener. Can definitely imagine people dancing at the late Ranchman's in Calgary. Could see that line dancing going down. Halfway Down is also another kind of barn burner, right? I'm sure it satisfies our audience really well. Then I Try to Think About Elvis. Clearly the single on the album, I'm pretty sure I must have heard that one when it came out. It's fun, you know, even for not a country and Western person. It's a real toe tapper. And I realize this is a big one, I'm pretty sure. Old Weakness, not bad. You know, I like the upbeat ones, I guess. And then, you know, I get to slow songs like When the Angels Fly. And admittedly, I'm not really too into slow songs regardless of who does them or what genre. Shameless would be an exception in the country genre. And a fun little fact there, that's actually a Billy Joel song. But I'm just not overly into ballads, particularly country one. Overall, I feel like there's a little bit of gospel hidden in this album. I didn't listen closely to the lyrics, but a lot of it sort of struck me as something you might hear at a gospel church. I like her voice. You know, it's very upbeat in the songs. They sound as good as anything out there, really, in country can, I think. But I lack the finely tuned ear to country music to know, is she above and beyond her contemporaries? Is this an album that really was something truly special and jumped out at the time? Or is this just a decent country album, you know? For me, it's nice. It was good. It was fine. I listened to it a handful of times, and I enjoyed it enough. It's just not entirely 100% my thing, but glad I had the experience. How about you, Alan?
Hey, thanks, Scott. All right, to our longtime listeners, it's probably no surprise that I am not the biggest country music aficionado. But that being said, I've really been coming around to country over the last few years. I definitely do not have that knee-jerk aversion to it like I used to. But it's not my wheelhouse, right? So I don't think I've ever heard of Patty Loveless before this pick. And I've certainly never heard of any of her songs on this album. So for me, going into it this month, it was like very fresh ears. I went in with zero expectations. I had no idea, you know, what to expect. It wasn't bad, you know. Definitely sounded dated. There were a lot of like slide guitars and like the usual like 90s country tropes. Like, is it tropes? I don't even know if that's the right word. But like sonically, the fingerprints of 90s country music is all over it. And that's fine. This album came out in, I believe it was 94. Which is generally a good year for music anyway. Personally, I think this album could have probably done with a few more upbeat, fun songs. You know, while this album doesn't quite live up to that country music cliche of crying in your beer because your dog ran away with your lover and your truck won't start so you can't chase him down. You know, this wasn't quite depressing that way, but still, like, at least half of the songs on the album, if not a greater percentage than that, were pretty slow, emotionally charged ballads. And that's fine if that's what you're into. But it ain't what I'm into. Though I will say this, and this is something I've always appreciated about country music. The storytelling is right up there with hip hop. I think the way these artists craft stories and like suck you in to a narrative that you kind of want to push through and see how it ends, like that's present on this album for sure. And the one song, like all of the songs on the album had really good storytelling, but I think the one that really painted the sorry guys. The one song that painted the clearest picture for me, or I guess the best picture, was a song called Ships. And it's basically a love ballad about, these two people who didn't have much in common finding love at a Las Vegas casino. It was sort of cute. And the other ballady song that kind of stuck out to me a little bit was the song You Don't Even Know Who I Am. It's about the dissolution of a relationship, and I think it's probably pretty relatable for a lot of people. So, but like I said, ballads are not really my jam. One or two on an album is about all I really have the capacity for, unless they're really good. But the songs that were not ballads, they were all right. There were a few that stood out to me. Feeling Good About Feeling Bad, that was a bop. I kind of found myself bouncing around to it. There's a song, Try to Think About Elvis. It's another fast one, really catchy. But I think the catchiest one for me was Halfway Down. For me, that was probably the standout track on the album. Definitely shows its age again, more of that traditional country. I don't even know if you'd call it pop country or whatever, country pop. But, the upbeat kind of yeehaw country, that was it. I did not like the titular track. It wasn't my jam. I think that was my least favorite song on the album. So, anyway, yeah, Patty Loveless. I don't know, man. Didn't go in with any large expectations, and I don't think I'm really leaving with any either. I don't know if this album was like super impactful to me, but still like to get out of my comfort zone and explore new things. That's the whole point of this podcast. So I am curious to hear what you think, Darren.
Well, first of all, you son of a bitch. It was like you're in my head. You literally very much reviewed the album and thought the exact same things I did. Very similar take, actually. I as well, notoriously wasn't really a country fan in my life. And actually, now that you've talked about everything I'm going to, now I can maybe give a little more history. But for me, I was raised in Prince Edward Island. Everybody just you're some little small town yoke there. You must listen to country music. But no, country music actually, I'm not saying it's not popular in PEI, but not the way it is out in Alberta or anything like that. So I wasn't really raised around it. And, my mom liked Julio Iglesias and Willie Nelson. So a little bit, I heard Willie Nelson. And some of the old stuff, like I grew up, like Johnny Cash stuff. To me, that's almost not even country, which is awesome. I love that old stuff, but I didn't really give it the time of day. And it was actually, the interesting thing about this is it was probably right about 1994. And I did some research. At that time, the big artists were Garth Brooks, Faith Hill, Brooks and Dunn, Tim McGraw. Shania Twain's album was going to come out the next year that hit it really big. So, it's really good when we do these reviews. You really have to put yourself in that era and time and think about what this was around, what was happening, especially because we're trying to look at it for a few reasons. Hey, if it stands up and if you should listen to it, but also to go back and realize what it did in that time. Was it influential in advancing the art or influencing future artists, maybe not even of that particular genre, but others going forward. So I think for this, I really, she was stuck. But anyway, I'll finish my story first. So 1994, I was bartending in a kind of live music rock bar, and I was not liking country, but a lot of my friends were, and Garth Brooks was coming to town. Now, I kind of knew some of his songs from what they played, but didn't really give a shit. But they were all going, and I'm like, okay, I'll go to the I love live music, so I'm a sucker for live music. I go to this concert. I have to say, that night, Garth Brooks blew my mind, started me down somewhat of a path of at least trying to understand and appreciate music. It was one of the best live concerts to this day I've ever seen. It was around those years, the mid 90s. He was just amazing. Just a great show. He's super great entertainer, really talented. Did a lot of like one-on-one. He would send his band away and then just play a few ballads and just say, hey, you want a request? And he'd play some rock tune and things like that. Like, it was just an amazing show. So I started then to kind of appreciate it. And I moved to Calgary, Alberta. That's where the three of us, except for Scott Coates in Thailand, who was also from here, so would know. But this is known to be a cowboy town and the home of the world famous Calgary Stampede Rodeo. So, I mean, during the Stampede here, and anybody from not here that's never been here, everybody turns into a cowboy for those 10 days while Stampede's on. It's hilarious, but it's super fun, and it is a great time, and highly recommend you visit Calgary if you haven't, especially during those summer times. Super fun. But country music's everywhere. So when I listened to this album, to me, I was just like, first of all, I remember the era, but I was just like, this sounds like every Stampede to me. Like, it's a really safe artist as well. Very pleasant. Like Alan, I said, I'm not the biggest country fan. I'm not the biggest slow ballad fan necessarily, same as him. But I actually found this really pleasant, really nice. And here's where I'm going to kind of get into a little more detail is, as mentioned, with all those artists that were coming out now, like, they were really, this was the big kind of first dive into pop, where it was really starting to change. Pop producers were starting to come in and do more country. And like, as mentioned, Shania was coming the next year. And then from there, God, all hell broke loose, and hence Taylor Swift and everything that recently. It's just, you see these memes on social media now, what it'd be like, you can't just, sing a pop song with a twang and call it country music. And it's very much suffering from that. So Patty Loveless, she's born in 57. So at this time, she's almost 30. She's really straddling this weird universe. First of all, I mean, she has an amazing voice. She actually, Rolling Stone did a review and said the top 200 singers of all time. She finished 177th. And I believe it. Her voice was amazing. I think this is pre-auto-tune. And a auto-tune can be a device used to create, but it can also be a crutch for people that are just bad and trying to be good. And she doesn't need that. So, I mean, I could not respect that more. I really sensed, and I've been to the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, and it's an amazing experience. I actually got to go on stage and everything. Thank you, Andrew Furco. But I'm rambling on a bit, but it's good because I think it really reminded me of the Grand Ole Opry. And it's funny, I was studying about her, and it's like, oh, here she is, 2007, the Grand Ole Opry. Of course she is. Like, she's perfect for that audience, which was very neo-traditional. She was from Kentucky, so there's a bit of bluegrass in there. And but she wanted to get into pop a bit, but I think she was just so talented and so traditional. She was just this go-between where she could just actually sing and be that good. I try to think about Elvis. Something like that to me sounds like a more pop song. It was definitely more pop structured and not as traditional kind of country. Like Alan said, like, I've lost my dog and I fell out of love 5 times. But really, you could see she was straddling two worlds, but she was just that talented. But anyway, I'm kind of rambled on enough, but I appreciate it, and I'm interested to hear what you thought, Scott, because you picked it.
Yeah, thanks. As I've mentioned before, my mom was the country music director at the local AM radio station when I was a kid, and she had a taste for the classics of the 60s and the 70s. And even though my taste trended more towards pop and rock, there was a lot of Loretta, a lot of Willie in the air too, and it was setting my expectations of just what a country song should sound like. So this isn't surprising considering she's 7 albums in, including she's already had a greatest hits record at this point in her career. You figured she would really have this polished and ready to go at this point, right? So this album is a survey course on what's valued in a classic artist and album. As you mentioned before, there's There's songs that if you strip the country twang off of it, it could easily be recorded, I would say, as folk, maybe not pop, but folk, a lot of them, right? The lyrics are strong enough, the instrumentation is strong enough. But you've got your honky tonk piano. There's a whole lot of, bom, 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 and dun, 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 those standard kind of lead-ins to the chorus in country music. As Alan said, your other favorite instruments like the slide guitar, the harmonica, there's some steel banjo, they all make their appearances. But I don't want to downplay this album as like something campy, right? Like you said, there's a lot of strong ballads, a lot of strong songs in here. It's very much an homage to all of those things that we feel are essentially country. I think my biggest surprise, Darren, you brought it up, was just how strong the voice of Patty does have. Like, it's serious Reba level pipes, and I just never clued into it before. She's just so smooth and softly lilted in the lower range, and then she can get like a little gravel in there if she wants to as well, right? And all of her high notes they seem effortless. It's like she's a country diva, the equivalent of a diva in country music, right? It's very impressive. I would arguably say, I mean, you've already said she was 177 overall. I'd say easily she's got to be somewhere in the top 10 for country. We'd actually have to build the list for me to try and eliminate her from that. But if she wasn't in top 10, I would need to see the 10 people that someone thinks is ahead of her. I can name 2 or 3, but I don't think I can name 10. I think something that shocked me when I was listening to this album is I think I got old. Like, listening to the lyrics about all the different ways to find love, to lose love, to not even know you were in love. I was nodding along the entire time. I think I've gone through all that shit right now at this point in my life. I'm like the demo for this album.
That's funny.
It wasn't like Alan would say, it's not a take the truck down to the lake and look at the stars with your best girl kind of album, It was a real heart wrencher.
They were relatable songs.
I know. And I think the older you get, the more relatable it gets because you've had all those experiences. Right?
God damn it, Patty. God damn it.
What are you doing to us?
Maybe that's deep down why I don't like country music.
Maybe.
Because I don't want to confront my emotions.
It does dig up a lot of old wounds in a way that a box full of Nickelback photographs never could.
Nickelback's a good band. Listen to the episode. You'll see why.
Oh my God, say it ain't so. That's Weezer. You should listen to them instead of Nickelback. The one thing I want to mention, because we have all mentioned songwriting and how much we like it. She doesn't write the songs on this album. She doesn't write the songs on like any of her albums, but she does have a team of songwriters that seem to continue through all of her albums, with a couple coming and going, and they're all ridiculously talented singer-songwriters in their own right. She, so I don't hold this as a knock against her. She's obviously got a collaborative effort with this group of people she loves to work with, and they're cranking on it. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, putting on my country hat, there isn't a bad track on the entire album. And I am leaving this month with no exhaustion from it. I can listen to it for like another month and still enjoy it. I check out the play counts on songs in Spotify. And in this one, I'm surprised at the difference between the listens on the album singles and the rest of the album. I think this record does have a deep bench, to use a sports metaphor. And instead of just going over the singles, I'm just going to call out my 3 favorites on the rest of the album. I thought A Handful of Dust is a great bluegrassy style song. Old Weakness, great honky tonk bumper. You had mentioned, Darren, that you thought she went pop. I think she went a little honky tonk more than pop.
Yeah, I see. I definitely. Yeah, it was more the Elvis. I thought that was quite happy.
That one looks like, hey, let's try and get a country line dance.
Yeah, I would wonder. I'm like, oh yeah, this. I'm sure I've seen a line dance at the Ranchmans and Stampede. I don't go to the Ranchmans. Somebody tried to beat me up there.
Oh,
honky tonk was the word I was looking for. When I said it was kind of poppy, I meant honky tonk, and I just didn't have that in my vocabulary. So thank you.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now we've evolved you in one session. Over My Shoulder, really well done. Love Lost country ballad. So Yeah, we talk about albums, not songs. I think this album, it's a shame that the entirety of it hasn't been listened to people as much as it is. So, yeah, with everyone's thoughts in mind, let's go back around the table and we'll start with Scott C and get some final thoughts and scores.
Oh, thanks again, Scott. And so, to get into the ratings, like I mentioned earlier, I don't mind some country once in a while. Generally, people like Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Dwight Yoakam. Beyond that, it doesn't hit heavy in my rotation at all, really. And while I didn't mind listening to the album, it certainly didn't inspire me to start listening to more country. Hasn't set me on any new paths, and I won't be returning to it, I don't think. Or Patti Loveless. And not there's anything wrong with her. It's just, again, I don't think it's my jam. I didn't feel like this album was one either where I'd say to someone interested in country music that, wow, you got to check out this one. There's a lot of other country albums I would probably say that about. And what I've read and gathered about it, I don't think it's noted as changing the course of country music or being a hard standout. So my numbers are low, but not that I think it's a bad album. It just didn't really speak to me. So under influence, I'm going to give it a 1 because it hasn't recommended. I'll give it a 1 because there's a lot of other country albums I'd recommend before this one. And overall, it's a 1.5. Not that it's, again, a bad album. It's just, for me, it just didn't entirely jive. How about you, Alan?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, other Scott Gregory, you said something that kind of struck me a little bit here. You said that there are no bad songs on this album, and I think I have to agree with you. Where we depart in terms of opinions is that I did get exhausted listening to this after a while. I even said to myself upon the final play, like, I'm going to be glad when I don't have to listen to this anymore. And it's not because I genuinely disliked listening to it. I didn't get any sort of emotional catharsis out of it that, aside from like the relatable ballads that make me sad that I kind of don't want to, labor on too long. So, and that's, for me, that's like the biggest knock on this album was the balladiness of it. So, I listened to this album many, many times over the course of the last few weeks, and it never really grew on me that much. I listened, and the first time I made first impressions, and then over and over again, it didn't really ever grow on me. So nothing against it. There's just nothing particularly special about it that draws me in. And because I don't really have a background with country music or anything like that, there was no real sense of nostalgia either. So, maybe I would have enjoyed this a little more if there was more honky tonk involved. Honky tonk's usually a good time. And there are a couple of tracks that I might find myself revisiting one day if I ever need to play some country music for an event I'm hosting or if I'm DJing or something, but that's about it. So, anyway, as far as scores go, for influence, I'm disinclined to listen to any more Patti Loveless. It's just not my thing. So I'm giving it a 1 out of 5. If you're into country, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for recommendation because I think it's all well done. It's all well done music. If that's your jam, definitely give it a listen. And overall, there was nothing offensive about it. It's just not something I find myself gravitating back to. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 overall, but that's about as high as I'm willing to take it. And I think that's a pretty fair rating. Darren, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. It was a very pleasant album, and I agree. I don't think there is a bad song. They're all. I wrote pleasant. Like I was like, it's not really my thing. The same thing as you. I couldn't listen to it over and over and over and over. I have moments where I'll get into a little country thing and put a playlist and stuff, but to sit for me and listen to entire country albums doesn't happen very often. But it was beautiful, and her voice is outstanding. And even I work with a guy, Greg, and I was playing it, and then he came. He's like, "Oh, is this Patty Loveless?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know what Patty Loveless is?" Like you, Alan. The name rung a bell, but I couldn't have told you one song or any idea. Like, the name sound familiar. That was as much as I knew her. But yeah, he was like right away. He's like, "Oh yeah," and Scott Gregory, you mentioned it. He's just like, "Oh yeah, she was out at the time of like her and Reba, and they were all around, and these powerful like country women in the '90s." And I'm like, "Oh, he knew all about her." And he's younger than me, but he likes his country. But he knew her quite well. So anyway, I thought that was cool. My scores are pretty close to yours, Alan. Actually, for influence, I'm kind of basing it more on that I think it is a pretty dynamite album, and in the country community quite influential. Wasn't big for me, so I'm a 3 there. It's kind of just a bit more, but yeah, it's a great album. Recommend. I actually came in a bit lower. I'm kind of like 2.5, and it's, again, if you're a country fan, definitely from that era. It is kind of, I would have liked to seen it go either way. Probably I'd almost like her to say more bluegrass traditional, and don't worry about trying to cross it. But anyway, a great album. And then overall, I actually came in a bit higher because I do respect who she is, what she did. And I was blown away when Rolling Stone gave that 177th out of 200 best singers across all genres. It's pretty cool. And she really can sing. And I appreciate that. That to me is a real talent. So I came in 3.5. So Scott Gregory, back to you.
Yeah, so great points. I think both of you in your previous sessions and now, have echoed some of my thoughts. I think it's important to see this album in context. I think it was rewarded with that album of the year simply because it was an indication that even though times are changing, that there is still a reverence and a room for traditional country inside of the community that was almost demanded. And she is definitely positioned well with her voice and her musical sensibility to provide that. And I think she did that with this album. I'm going to put on my closet country hat when I'm doing these scores. So if you're a country fan out there, this is the important score for you. So I think influence wise, I'm going to give it a 4. It is that rock standing against the river, no pun intended, that's coming with the pop country, right? And it's just such a really well done album. There was a clear plan here. It was meant to be this soft, emotional, ballad filled album about relationships and finding them and losing them and living through the changes of them. And so, yeah, I think a 4 for influence. I'm going to recommend it at a 4.5, especially if you're trying to get a feel for classic country, but with a little bit of a modern sensibility to it, high production value on this album. You don't have to hear like the graininess of the old recording equipment down in the 50s and the 60s. And overall, I would have to decide whether I'm going to round down or up between 4 and 4.5. And I'm going to round up simply on the strength that I think this album is really well put together as an album. There's a cohesiveness to it and a plan that's evident. So I think it gets that 4.5 out of me.
Yeah, good pick, Scott. I like when we pick, and the thing is, I mean, we're all different. Actually, we all have kind of slightly different music tastes, even though I think we all do this because we have a love of music in general and are open to it all. But you just listen to what you like, and you might learn over time. But I really like when you albums like country that I would never usually listen to or pick. So yeah, like again, pleasant, beautiful album.
Thanks. Yeah, I think as a group, we're like a Venn diagram, that we have a big overlap, but there is these outer rims that we have that when we pick from our own special pockets there and bring it into the group. I really appreciate that. And so thanks. I'm glad I could do that.
Yeah, definitely, man. Good pick.
Cool. Do you want to hint at anything, Darren, or are we just gonna let them listen to yours?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure on the pick, so I'm not going to reveal that. I was talking to these guys before we started recording about it, but for this next month, starting next month, I'm starting off again. It kind of usually rotates between the 4 of us once every month. But this time, Alan had a great idea for a concept round, and we've done this in the past where we might, we pick the movie soundtracks once, or bands people love to hate once, and we'll do things like that. So
Nickelback.
Yeah, right. You gotta go. Those are good. Yeah, or we did live albums. We did these kind of things, genres. Sometimes it's just to kind of mix it up and have some fun. But Alan had a good idea, and I actually really liked it. So he said, "Why don't we do a round on one-hit wonders?" So we go back. We each will go pick a one-hit wonder, and we just discussed this, and we'll pick the album that maybe that one hit was from. Like I don't want to. Well, that doesn't matter. Like you think of Tommy Two Tone, like Jenny 8675309, like something like that. Like that's a song everybody knows, but name another song, right? Yeah. You can if you want.
Name another Bugles or Buggles song.
But that's it. So
say their name right, right?
But you know darn well. Some of these artists went on to succeed or have careers, and maybe it just wasn't in this country or something like that. So I really liked it. I think I'm gonna might push it in that. I almost want to find somebody that was a success that, maybe. Just wasn't anywhere else. So, or maybe we just pick one that's just like, I don't know, Kung Fu Fighting, right? And just like by Carl Douglas, and then you turn out, nope, that was it. Like it was horrible. One album, like,
one and done.
Yeah, you never know. But I think it's a real fun concept. So, basically the same time this episode is up, you're probably going to see the other episode where I'll talk about what I picked and kind of talk about this again. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to be the next round. So you just have to stay tuned for what it is. Scott.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you to everyone out there in Sonic Collective Land for joining us on this month's journey. We hope you join us for next month. Watch the soniccollective.com and our various socials to find out what Darren's pick is, and come have another chat in 30 days. Until then, this is Scott G, Scott C, Darren and Alan signing off. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Sonic Collective, where we've explored the music, the history, and the impact of some of the greatest albums of all time. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained new insights and appreciation for the music you and we love. Join us next month for another exciting album, and until then, keep listening to great music.